As you look over your career, can you share a couple of the moments that where you had major shifts in your understanding of the impact of language and what those shifts were that have kind of gotten to you to where you are today?
The first one, the first one was when I saw Werner Erhard speak. Not so much it was Werner Erhard, but the way he was speaking did something differently than most other public speakers at the time, which drew me into that discovery. And then I did their communication workshop, which is also another opening on how language works. But one of the most profound shifts, and the shift that has allowed the work that I do now to be as beneficial to people as before, more than before, is the work that I did with Fernando Flores. And I went to work with Fernando. He was a Minister of Economics of Chile. When Allende got overthrown, they sent him out to negotiate because they knew he wouldn't be killed. And finally, Amnesty International got him back. He got a PhD at Stanford for computer language and communication. Went to Berkeley with John Searles and got a master's in human philosophy and language, and put them together. And I was fortunate enough to work with Fernando at that time, while he was formulating the merger of the whole computer phenomena, and the human linguistic aspect of language. But the thing that made the most impact is he asked me at one time, and Fernando's a big, heavy bear of a man, and at the time he couldn't speak English very well, and he had a very heavy Chilean accent, and he would go, "Joe, I ask you a question." And I would sit there and wait for the question, and the question would come. He says, "I have offer for you. I return you to that which is to be fully human in this world. You accept?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to do that." He says, "Fine, I'd like to have a meeting with your wife." Then I started to get a little nervous. And so Judy came and concurred that she would be willing to support the experiment and see what had happened. So Judy had left the office, and at that time I was working with Fernando all the time, and he said, "Joel, come in." And so I walked into the office, and he says, "Good, Judy says yes, now we begin." And I said, "Boy, that'll be great. What's the first part of this exercise?" And he goes, "You say nothing to me, nothing." And I go, "I don't," he says, "Nothing. Do not move lips, nothing." He says, "You listen to the story in the back of your head. You're full of shit, guy." He says, "We see what happens." So my first assignment was Fernando, needless to say, was to say nothing, as he would say. And he gave me two books to read. One, Martin Heidegger's Philosophy of Being and Time, and he gave me another book called written by Umberto Maturana, who was a Chilean biologist, and it was about the biology of learning and cognition. And he says, "Read the books, Joe." And both of those books, any paragraph will put you right to sleep at night if you need to go to sleep at night. It's very quick, hard read. And then a couple of days later, he gave me a little black book, and he asked me to start recording at least 3 things a day that I'm discovering about being a creature of language. And so I did. And I would write sort of trivial stuff, a lot about not being able to talk and how noisy it was inside of me, more than what I discovered about being language out there. And I would write in the book, as I kept reading both Umberto and Martin Heidegger, that I don't understand the books, I don't understand what they're talking about. And Fernando would look at my book, and he'd close the book, and he'd say, "Keep reading. Learning happens in your body, not in your brain. Eventually, someday you'll wake up and they'll be totally different. So just don't stop reading." And it's a whole bunch about autopoietics, which is a different conversation about Umberto Maturana. But the thrust is, if you keep stimulating or perturbing a system, eventually the entire system shifts in a way that allows it to be seen newly. And sure enough, I kept doing it, and my writing, was getting a little better about what I was discovering about being in language. One of the things that I was starting to discover is when you are quiet inside and you're not listening or arm wrestling with that little voice inside, and you start to listen to what people are saying, there's a whole bunch more going on in the background than I was ever aware of before. And when you start listening to the background, you can start predicting different outcomes of conversations. So that was a huge shift. And one day, sure enough, as Fernando said, I woke up and I looked around and the world was different. That I'm just a little creature of language, and I live in language as does everyone else. And that there's another way to interact with people and each other. So I started writing down these new discoveries about the whole phenomena of language and speaking. And then Fernando, I was driving him somewhere across San Francisco, and he opens up my book and he looks and he goes like this: "Ha ha! You're awake! Now, part 2, are you ready?" And by then, I was loving living in the silence.